Canto 6. From lawless lust by wondrous grace fair Una is released, whom salvage nation does adore, and learns her wise beheast. As when a ship that flies fair under sail, and hidden rock escaped hath unwares, that lay in wait her wrack for to bewail. The mariner yet half amazed stares at peril past, and yet in doubt ne dares to joy at his fool happy oversight. So doubly is distressed twixt joy and cares the dreadless courage of this elfin knight, having escaped so sad ensamples in his sight. 2. Yet sad he was that his too hasty speed the fair Douce had forced him leave behind, and yet more sad that Una his dear dreed her truth had stained with treason so unkind. Yet crime in her could never creature find, but for his love, and for her own self's sake she wandered had from one to other end degrees him for to seek, ne ever would forsake, till her unwares the fears Sansloy did overtake. 3. Who, after Archimago's foul defeat, led her away into a forest wilda, and turning wrathful fire to lustful heat, with beastly sin thought her to have defilda, and made the vassal of his pleasures wilda. Yet first he cast by treaty, and by trains, her to persuade that stubborn fort to yilda, for greater conquest of hard love he gains, that works it to his will, than he that it constrains. 4. With fawning words he courted her a while, and looking lovely, and oft sighing sore. Her constant heart did tempt with diverse guile, but words and looks, and sighs she did abhor as rock of diamond steadfast evermore. Yet for to feed his fiery lustful eye, he snatched the veil that hung her face before, then gan her beauty shine, as brightest sky, and burnt his beastly heart for her chastity. 5. So when he saw his flattering arts to fail, and subtle engines bet from battery, with greedy force he gan the fort assail, whereof he weened possessed soon to be, and with rich spoil of ransacked chastity. Ah heavens! That do this hideous act behold, and heavenly virgin thus outraged see, how can he vengeance just so long withhold and hurl not flashing flames upon that Paynim bold? 6. The piteous maiden careful comfortless, does throw out thrilling shrieks and shrieking cries, the last vain help of women's great distress, and with loud plaints importuneth the skies, that molten stars do drop like weeping eyes, and Phoebus flying so most shameful sight, his blushing face in foggy cloud implies, and hides for shame. What wit of mortal wight can now devise to quit a thrall from such a plight? 7. Eternal providence exceeding thought, where none appears can make herself away, a wondrous way it for this lady wrought, from leon claws to pluck the griped prey. Her shrill outcries and shrieks so loud did bray, that all the woods and forests did resound. A troop of fawns and satyrs degrees far away within the wood were dancing in a round, whiles old Sylvanus degrees slept in shady arbor sound. 8. Who when they heard that piteous strained voice, in haste forsook their rural merriment, and ran towards the far rebonded noise to weet what wight so loudly did lament. Unto the place they come incontinent, whom when the raging Saracen espied, a rude, mishapen, monstrous rabelement, whose like he never saw, he durst not bide, but got his ready steed, and fast away gan ride. 9. The willed wood gods arrived in the place, there find the virgin doleful desolate, with ruffled raiments and fair blubbered face, as her outrageous foe had left her late, and trembling yet through fear of former hate. All stand amazed at so uncouth sight, and gin to pity her unhappy state, all stand astonied at her beauty bright, in their rude eyes unworthy of so woeful plight. 10. She more amaze 500, in double dread doth dwell, and every tender part for fear doth shake, as when a greedy wolf through hunger fell, a seely lamb far from the flock does take, of whom he means his blouty feast to make, a lion spies fast running towards him. The innocent prey in hast he does forsake, which quit from death yet quakes in every limb with change of fear, degrees to see the lion look so grim. 11. Such fearful fit aside her trembling heart, ne word to speak, ne joint to move she had. The salvage nation feel her secret smart, and read her sorrow in her countenance sad, their frowning foreheads with rough horns icklad, and rustic horror degrees all aside do lay. And gently grinning, show a semblance glad to comfort her, and fear to put away, their backward bent knees degrees teach her humbly to obey. 12. The doubtful damsel dare not yet commit her single person to their barbarous truth. Degrees, but still twixt fear and hope amazed does sit. Late learned degrees what harm to hasty trust and suth. They in compassion of her tender youth, and wonder of her beauty sovereign, are one with pity and unwonted ruth, and all prostrate upon the lowly plain, do kiss her feet, and fawn on her with countenance fain. 13. Their hearts she guesseth by their humble guise, and yields her to extremity of time. So from the ground she fearless doth arise, and walketh forth without suspect of crime. Degrees they all as glad, as birds of joyous prime, thence lead her forth, about her dancing round, shouting and singing all a shepherd's rhyme, and with green branches strowing all the ground, do worship her, as queen, with olive degrees guirland crowned. 14. And all the way their merry pipes they sound, that all the woods with doubled echo ring, and with their horned feet degrees do wear the ground, leaping like wanton kids in pleasant spring. So towards old Sylvanus they her bring, who with the noise awaked cometh out to weet the cause, his weak steps governing, and aged limbs on cypress stadle stout, and with an ivy twin his wast is girt about. 15. Far off he wonders, what them makes so glad, or Bacchus' merry fruit degrees they did invent, or Cybele's frantic rites degrees have made them mad, they drawing nigh, unto their god present that flower of faith and beauty excellent. The god himself, viewing that mirror rare, degrees stood long amazed, and burnt in his intent. His own fair dryope degrees now he thinks not fair, and follow foul when her to this he doth compare. 16. The wood-born people fall before her flat, and worship her as goddess of the wood, and old Sylvanus' self bethinks not, what to think of wight so fair, but gazing stood, in doubt to deem her born of earthly brood. Sometimes Dame Venus' self he seems to see, but Venus never had so sober mood. Sometimes Diana he her takes to be, but misseth bow and shafts and buskins to her knee. 17. By view of her he ginneth to revive his ancient love, and dearest Cyperus, degrees and calls to mind his portraiture alive. How fair he was, and yet not fair to this, degrees, and how he slew with glancing dart amiss a gentle hind, the which the lovely boy did love as life, above all worldly bliss, for grief whereof the lad ennoed after joy, degrees, but pinned away in anguish and self-wild annoy. 18. The woody nymphs, fair hamadryads, degrees her to behold do thither run apace, and all the troop of lightfoot naiads degrees flock all about to see her lovely face. But when they viewed have her heavenly grace, they envy her in their malicious mind, and fly away for fear of foul disgrace. But all the satyrs scorn their woody kind, degrees, and henceforth nothing fair but her on earth they find. 19. Glad of such luck, the luckless degrees lucky maid, did her content to please their feeble eyes, and long time with that salvage people stayed, to gather breath in many miseries. During which time her gentle wit she plies, to teach them truth, which worshipped her in vain, and made her image of idolatrized degrees. But when their bootless zeal she did restrain from her own worship, they her assa would worship fain. 20. It fortuned a noble warlike knight degrees by just occasion degrees to that forest came, to seek his kindred, and the lineage right, from whence he took his well-deserved name. He had in arms abroad won much fame, and filled far lands with glory of his might, plain, faithful, true, and enemy of shame, and ever love 500 to fight for ladies' right. But in vain glorious phrase he little did delight. 21. A satyr's son iborn in forest willed, by strange adventure as it did betide, and there begotten of a lady mild, fair Thyome's degrees the daughter of Labride, that was in sacred bands of wedlock tied to Thurian, a loose unruly swain, who had more joy to range the forest wide, and chase the salvage beast with busy pain, than serve his lady's love, and wast in pleasure's vain. 22. The forlorn maid did with love's longing burn, and could not lackey her lover's company. But to the wood she goes, to serve her turn, and seek her spouse that from her still does fly, and follows other game and venery. A satyr chanced her wandering for to find, and made her person thrall unto his beastly kind. 23. So long in secret cabin there he held, then home he suffered her for to retire, for ransom leaving him the late-born child, whom till to riper years he gan aspire. He nursled up in life and manners wilda, amongst wild beasts and woods, from laws of men exilda. 24. For all he taught the tender imp, was but degrees to banish cowardice and bastard fear. His trembling hand he would him force to put upon the lion and the rugged bear. And from the she-bears teats her whelps to tear, and eke willed roaring bulls he would him make to tame, and ride their backs not made to bear and the roebucks in flight to overtake, that every beast for fear of him did fly and quake. 25. Thereby so fearless, and so fell he grew, that his own sire and maester of his guise degrees did often tremble at his horrid view, degrees and oft for dread of hurt would him advise, the angry beasts not rashly to despise, nor too much to provoke. For he would learn the lion stoop to him in lowly wise, a lesson hard, and make the libbard stern leave roaring, when in rage he for revenge did earn. 26. And for to make his power approved more willed beasts in Iran yokes he would compel, the spotted panther and the tusked boar, the pardel swift and the tigray cruel, the antelope and wolf both fierce and fell, and them constrain in equal team to draw. Such joy he had, their stubborn hearts to quell, and sturdy courage tame with dreadful awe that his behest they feared as a tyrant's law. 27. His loving mother came upon a day unto the woods to see her little son, and chanced unwares to meet him in the way after his sports and cruel pastime dawn, when after him a lioness did run, that roaring all with rage, did load require her children dear, whom he away had won. The lion whelps she saw how he did bear, and lull in rugged arms, withouten childish fear. 28. The fearful dame all quaked at the sight, and turning backie, gan fast to fly away, until with love revoked from vain affright, she hardly yet persuaded was to stay. And then to him these womanish words gan say, Ah, Satyrane, my dearling and my joy, for love of me leave off this dreadful play, to dally thus with death is no fit toy, go find some other playfellows, mine own sweet boy. 29. In these and like delights of blouty game he trained was, till riper years he wrought, and there abode, whilst any beast of name walked in that forest, whom he had not taught to fear his force. And then his courage hot desired of foreign foemen to be known, and far abroad for strange adventures sought in which his might was never overthrown, but through all fairyland his famous worth was blown, degrees. 30. Yet evermore it was his manner fair, after long labours and adventures spent, unto those native woods for to repair, to see his sire and offspring ancient. And now he thither came for like intent, where he unwares the fairest Una found, strange lady, in so strange habiliment teaching the satyrs, which her sat around, true sacred lore, which from her sweet lips did redound. 31. He wondered at her wisdom heavenly rare, whose like in women's wit he never knew, and when her courteous deeds he did compare, gan her admire and her sad sorrows rew, blaming of fortune which such troubles threw, and joyed to make proof of her cruelty, on gentle dame, so hurtless and so true, thenceforth he kept her goodly company, and learned her discipline of faith and verity. 32. But she all vowed unto the Redcrosse Knight, his wandering peril closely did lament, ne in this new acquaintance could delight, but her dear heart with anguish did torment, and all her wit in secret counsels spent, how to escape. At last in privy wise to Satyrane she showed her intent, who glad to gain such favour, gan devise how with that pensive maid he best might thence arise. 33. So on a day when satyrs all were gone to do their service to Sylvanus old, the gentle virgin left behind alone, he led away with courage stout and bold. Too late it was, to satyrs to be told, or ever hope recover her agon, in vain he seeks that having cannot hold. So fast he carried her with careful pain, that they the woods are past, and come now to the plain. 34. The better part now of the lingering day they travelled had, weenas they far espied a weary white forewandering by the way, and towards him they gan in haste to ride, to weet of news, that did abroad betide, or tidings of her knight of the Red Cross. But he them spying, gan to turn aside for fear as seemed, or for some feigned loss, more greedy they of news, fast towards him do cross. 35. A silly man, in simple weeds foreworn, and soiled with dust of the long dried way, his sandals were with toilsome travel torn, and face all tanned with scorching sunny ray, as he had travelled many a summer's day through boiling sands of Arabian und, and in his hand a Jacob's staff degrees to stay his weary limbs upon. And eke behind, his script did hang, in which his needments he did bind. 36. The knight approaching nigh, of him inkward tidings of war and of adventures knew, but wars nor new adventures none he heard. Then Una gan to ask if aught he knew, or heard abroad of that her champion true, that in his armor bare a crosslet red. "Ay me, dear dame," quoth he, "well may I row to tell the sad sight which mine eyes have read. These eyes did see that knight both living and eke dead." 37. That cruel word her tender heart so thrilled, that sudden cold did run through every vein, and stony horror all her senses filled with dying fit, that down she fell for pain. The knight her lightly reared up again, and comforted with courteous kind relief. Then, won from death, she bade him tell in plain the further process of her hidden grief. The lesser pangs can bear, who hath endure 500 the chief. 38. Then gan the pilgrim thus, "I chaunce this day, this fate all day, that shall I ever row to see 2 knights in travel on my way. A sorry sight, a wrong 500 in battle new, both breathing vengeance, both of wrathful hue. My fearful flesh did tremble at their strife, to see their blades so greedily imbrue, that drunk with bloud, yet thristed after life. What more? The Redcrosse Knight was slain with Paynim knife." 39. "Ah, dearest lord," quoth she, "how might that be, and he the stoutest knight that ever won?" "Ah, dearest dame," quoth he, "how might I see the thing that might not be, and yet was done? Where is said Satyrane, that Paynim's son that him of life, and us of joy hath reft?" "Not far away," quoth he hence doth one forby a fountain, where I laid him left washing his bloudy wounds, that through the steel were cleft." 40. Therewith the knight thence marched forth in hast, whiles Una with huge heaviness oppressed, could not for sorrow follow him so fast, and soon he came, as he the place had guessed, whereas that pagan proud himself did rest, in secret shadow by a fountain side, even he it was, that erst would have suppressed fair Una, whom when Satyrane espied, with foul reproachful words he boldly him defied. 41. And said, "Arise thou cursed miscreant, that hast with knightless guile and treacherous train fair knighthood foully shamed, and doest vaunt that good knight of the Red Cross to have slain. Arise, and with like treason now maintain thy guilty wrong, or else the guilty yield." The Ceres in this hearing rose amain, and catching up in hast his 3 square shield, and shining helmet, soon him buckled to the field. 42. And drawing nigh him said, "Ah, misborn elf, in evil hour thy foes thee hither sent, another's wrongs to wreak upon thyself. Yet ill thou blamest me, for having blent my name with guile and traitorous intent. That Redcrosse Knight, Purdy, I never slew, but had he been, where erst his arms were lent, degrees th enchanter vain degrees his error should not row. But thou his error shalt, degrees I hope, now proven true." 43. Therewith they gan, both furious and fell, to thunder blows, and fiercely to assail each other bent his enemy to quell. That with their force they pierced both plate and mail, and made wide furrows in their fleshes frail, that it would pity any living eye. Large floods of blood adown their sides did rail, but floods of blood could not them satisfy, both hungered after death, both chose to win or die. 44. So long they fight and fell revenge pursue, that fainting each themselves to breathe and let, and oft refreshed, battle oft renew, as when 2 boars with rankling malice met, degrees their gory sides fresh bleeding fiercely fret, till breathless both themselves aside retire, where foaming wrath their cruel tusks they whet, and trample earth, the whiles they may respire, then backy to fight again, new-breathed and entire. 45. So fiercely, when these knights had breathed once, they gan to fight return, increasing more their puissant force and cruel rage ataunts. With heaped strokes more hugely than before, that with their dry wounds and bloudy gore they both deformed, scarcely could be known. By this sad Una fraught with anguish sore, led with their noise, which through the air was thrown, a riv 500, were they in earth their fruitals bloud had sown. 46. Whom all so soon as that proud Ceres in espied, he gan revive the memory of his lewd lusts, and late attempted sin, and left the doubtful battle hastily, to catch her, newly offered to his eye. But Satyrane with strokes him turning, stayed, and sternly bade him other business ply, then hunt the steps of pure unspotted maid, wherewith he all in rag 500, these bitter speeches said. 47. O foolish fairy's son, what fury mad hath thee incensed, to hast thy doleful fate? Were it not better I that lady had, than that thou hadst repented it too late? Most senseless man he, that himself doth hate to love another. Lo then, for thine eyed here take thy lover's token on thy pate. Degrees so they two fight, the whiles the royal maid fled far away, of that proud Paynim sore afraid. 48. But that false pilgrim, which that leasing told, being indeed old Archimage, did stay in secret shadow, all this to behold, and much rejoiced in their blouty fray. But when he saw the damsel pass away, he left his stand, and her pursued apace, in hope to bring her to her last decay, degrees, but for to tell her lamentable case, degrees, and eke this battle's end, will need another place.